What's up, everybody in football land? You're here with Chiefs Focus Live, JP and Quentin, presented by Fantasy Sports Corporation and sponsored by... Who are we sponsored by? Underdog Fantasy.
Underdog Fantasy, my dude.
Yeah, I'm just joking. What's up, bro?
Hey, so I have an interesting... There's some news out there that I think will be... When I first heard it, I was like, this doesn't affect Kansas City at all. But the more I thought about it, I was like, ooh, this could get interesting. So I have an interesting proposition that Kansas City probably won't look towards. But I thought we'd at least discuss it because I want to hear your opinion on it.
Alrighty then.
So Chase Young is on the trade market officially.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Washington is looking to ship out Chase Young, or at least open to discussion about shipping out Chase Young, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, at first I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. They denied his fifth-year option. He blew his knee out, I think, 2 years ago at this point. So who cares? But I was like, well, actually, maybe Kansas City should nose around a little. So before I even say, what I think Kansas City should do, just right away, what are your thoughts on Kansas City looking to get Chase Young on the roster?
Look, I don't think it's a bad idea. We talked about this. I think when his fifth-year option was denied, we talked about this a little bit. The one good thing that we have going for us is that he's not going to require a lot of trade capital. If that was a trade situation. And apparently right now it is. So if I'm Brett Veach, knowing the fact that Eric Bieniemy is sitting over there and he likes the running backs and he likes Clyde, I would say, hey, here's Clyde. You like Clyde. Why don't you take Clyde? And we'll take Chase Young. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I wouldn't mind the acquisition. I don't think it's a bad thing. Yeah, it was 2 years ago. He blew out his knee. It is what it is. But I think he'd be okay in our system. He'd be utilized correctly. What is your opinion?
Well, we did not talk about this before the show started. That was going to be the thing I was going to bring up. I was like, what if we send Clyde over to Washington and a 4th, 5th round pick? And the reason I think that value is so low, if you remember, Jeff Okudah, the cornerback that was sent from Detroit to Atlanta for a 5th round pick. So I think it's reasonable that a player from the same draft who was selected at number 2 overall, Okudah was selected 3 overall. So the value I think is pretty low at this point for Young. And if you could send over Clyde, who would benefit Washington, because anytime you get a new offensive coordinator or head coach, you want a guy that goes to the new city in order to help learn the system. And we know that Clyde knows this system. And giving him a new chance, a new opportunity of just a new environment, I think that it seems like Clyde is sort of just over this franchise. He doesn't really want to be here anymore. So just give him an opportunity to go somewhere else. While Kansas City picks up a guy that, look, Chase Young was one of the most explosive guys coming off the ball when he came into the NFL. And you saw the talent there. I think that defensive line, I think, underperformed. And then what really came into when you start talking injuries, I think that really tore apart that defensive line. If you give Young an opportunity to come here and not have to be the guy, to just simply be a rotation piece, I think that you could see him flourish under this system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And look, we already know that Eric Bieniemy wants Clyde anyway. At least we know that. Um, we've talked about this. It's most likely where he's going to go, whether he's cut or whether we trade him. That's where he's going to end up at. So, and I'm fine with that because, like you said, it's going to get Clyde's going to if he still has. How should I put this? If he still has the football in him, the determination to play the game, which I doubt. I don't doubt that he does. I just feel like he doesn't have it with Kansas City, and vice versa. Kansas City doesn't really want him. They tried to trade him 3 times now. So why not let him go someplace where he's going to be rejuvenated? He's probably going to play his ass off, and we get a player that is going to be a good rotational piece. We can really test out and see how well his knee is going to do, and last in a system that will actually nurture his situation instead of hamper it. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I have no complaints about that whatsoever. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and if you trade, trading Clyde, is a $2 million cap savings, and you trading for Chase Young will cost you just under $6 million. So we're talking about you have to find $4 million. That's not hard.
No,
That's not a hard thing to do. So salary cap, we talk about DeAndre Hopkins coming to this roster. One of the things has been salary cap issue. That's not a problem with getting Chase Young, just because your $4 million is nothing.
no. And I don't think it's going to be a salary cap issue now with Dehop. Um, look, man, again, we've talked about this. The Chiefs have the highest. How should I say this? They have the highest amount of money that they can restructure out of any football team in the league at $83 million.
Yeah.
So it's not a salary cap issue with D Hop. It's or for Chase Young for that matter. It's more of a what do we want to spend for D Hop. Chase Young, I mean, you can possibly work out a deal with Washington to where they eat some of that salary. I mean, you figure we're going to basically end up coughing up $4 million, and when it all boils down to it, you're giving away 2, you're picking up 6. There's $4 million. So why not give Washington a conditional 7th rounder and say you guys eat $2 million more of Chase Young's contract? Then you're getting a conditional player, you're getting Clyde, and we're getting a player for what we can really do as far as a cap and what is it's really worth for us to do. It's not really worth us to, I don't think it's worth dropping $6 million on him right now. I'm not saying it's, if they did it, I'm not going to really complain, but I don't think if they can get away with doing it cheaper, I would do that. And I should say $4 million, but I would say if you can get away with paying him $2 million, even $3 million for a year to see how he does and give him an optional, I would do that in a minute. Because you got a player that doesn't want to be here. You got a player that you don't want here. So it's obvious that he had a really good relationship with EB. EB's a running back guy. Maybe he feels like he can rejuvenate Clyde. And maybe he will. Who knows? From everything I've heard, that's where he's going to end up anyway. So why not do it?
And if you're worried about sending a draft pick out, just I would say that Kansas City is right now on track to get 2 compensatory picks.
Yes.
They're going to get one from Juju Smith-Schuster leaving and one from Juan Thornhill leaving. And both of them are probably going to be 5th-round picks. So you'll send one out, but Kansas City's going to gain a couple of compensatory picks for the loss of those 2 guys. So, it's really negating it out. look, we talk about this is that in order to build a solid defensive line, you just need to get as many bodies in the room as possible. And I've been preaching this entire offseason that Kansas City is going to look to get a veteran pass rusher. I know that, Young is not necessarily what you would expect to be a veteran pass rusher, but he's been in the league for 3 years now. So he is a veteran in that sense. And if you're getting a guy who, is sort of a flyer, right? There's a reason why Washington didn't pick up his 5th-year option, right? There's not a ton of belief in there. Chase Young has sort of been moved on back on that depth chart. And I just think it's an opportunity for Kansas City to try and swoop in. Doesn't this just seem like the perfect Veach move,
It
right?
almost does.
Former first-round pick, a guy that's just not worth a ton. Let's go in and just give this guy an opportunity. And like I said, he doesn't have to be the number one pass rusher. He can be a guy that comes in, plays the edge to give, a guy or two a breather. Maybe he gets a dozen snaps a game and, you give him the opportunity to explode off the ball. Bing, bang, boom. You've got yourself a quality player.
I agree. And that also gives you, from what I'm hearing with the Chris Jones contract, when it's finished, part of that stipulation is Frank Clark coming back. So, which I believe is 100% going to happen either right at training camp or right before, somewhere in that training camp time frame. So, you got Frank Clark coming back. You bring in Chase Young. You don't need to bring back Carlos Dunlap if you don't want to, and you've got a complete defensive line. I'm all for that.
Yeah, I just think, this was one of those things during the offseason. Sometimes stuff like this sort of comes out of nowhere. It's a weird time for a guy to be sort of on the trade market. To me, this is usually a trade discussion we have pre-draft. This is a guy that gets put on the trade block before the draft because then that you're not giving a guy his 5th-year option. You just don't feel you're not fully in on this player, and you're looking to get draft assets right now. And this is the kind of guy that you see talked about before the draft. So for this to come out now, I really think impacts his value as well. So I do think Kansas City might be able to sneak him away from Washington with a 5th-round pick. I really do believe that. I don't think that this is just me throwing something out of nowhere.
No.
With what Okudah just went for from the Lions to Atlanta, and with his value just at an all-time low, I think Kansas City could sneak him away. And if Kansas City does that, I think you're talking about a damn good young defensive line.
He's only 25 years old, so
yeah.
it's not.
He's a guy with almost 4 years of experience, and is still in his early 20s. So
yeah,
it's just, it's coming together that this just seems like a Veach kind of move.
It really does, and the fact that even if we don't give up a 5th-rounder and we give him Clyde and a 7th-rounder, unless Veach again sees somebody that he likes and he thinks is going to go in the 7th round next year. Which I don't think that's really going to matter to him because they'll just grab him in the 6th round. It depends on how many 7th-round picks he has going into next year, but I wouldn't go more than the 6th at all and give him Clyde a conditional 6th and Clyde for him. And then again, the pick would be based upon eating some of that contract. So really, we're going to walk away. What I would like to see him do, if they're going to get him, I would like to have him at the exact same amount of money we're going to have to pay Clyde. So it almost breaks even.
Yeah. I think nice. If you get Chase Young to come here, you're probably putting him behind George Karlaftis. And so he's basically going to replace the snaps that Mike Dana gets, which we know what Mike Dana is. So I'm okay with putting Young in front of Mike Dana. I think that's a perfect spot for him. You have Charles Omenihu, George Karlaftis, and Felix all in front of him. Then you bring in Young, and who knows? Maybe if Young comes out and doesn't have a fantastic season, but has a productive season, maybe you can keep him here. Maybe you can sign him to a 2-year contract that's really a 1-year contract, and it's sort of a prove it thing, or it's a 3-year contract that's really a 2-year contract, and it's more of a prove it type thing. So, to me, this just seems like the perfect opportunity to bolster a spot that is probably your second weakest position group on the team.
Right now it is, but just simply because of who we lost. But man, it sucks because when you think about how great our pass rush was last year and how great our run defense was, and then you lose a few of those guys, you really want to replace as much as you can. And if we can bring Frank back, yeah, we probably won't bring it. If we do sign Chase Young, most likely Carlos Dunlap is not coming back here, but at least you can fill some of the spots. I'm still. I mean, we do have we got a replacement for Saunders, so it's not like we're hurting there. I think maybe he would just kind of solidify what we had last year and fill that extra spot. So I agree with you. I think it's a good idea. Um, Dehop. Let's talk about this real quick. Tired of talking about Dehop, to be honest with you, but
He visited with the Titans.
yes, he did, and that's probably not going to go anywhere. But unless they just offer him a giant, huge bag, I don't see that happening. But the Chiefs are still interested in him, from what I've been told. I don't know where they're at money wise with him. The restructure of Chris Jones is not going to completely do it because it's going to save you about what's it going to save you? Probably 15 million, maybe at the most, and that's pushing it. So you restructure him, then maybe you can pull some money somewhere else, which we can obviously do, whether it be Mahomes on a bonus structured contract or Kelsey or somebody else for that matter. But we can move money around to sign him if we wanted to. Here's the thing. I will say this until I'm dead. If for some reason Veach wants, I should say Mahomes wants D-Hop here, they will get him here. But they're not going to break the bank for him. They're not going to do the OBJ for him. I don't think it's going to happen. I do not see them giving him 15, 18 million a year. If it happens, it's going to be an anomaly, in my opinion. I just don't see it happening.
Are you saying that you don't see Kansas City doing it or anybody doing it?
I don't see Kansas City doing it.
Okay.
There's plenty of desperate ass teams out there that would do that in a minute. I mean, honestly, if they would, I mean, there's a lot of teams that would do that, but we're not that team. We are not desperate to have another wide receiver in the room. We have a slew of wide receivers that everybody's really high on. Team wise, they're really high on. I don't believe that he is worth 15 million a year. Even if it's a 1-year deal, unless it's up to 15 million and his base is like 8, okay. But I don't think he's worth that kind of money at 31 years old. Not for our team. He may be for somebody else, but just not for our team. We've yet to need a D-Hop style player. I'm sorry, but we haven't needed him. And I don't think we're going to need him now. But if he comes here, that's great. Just a little bit more arsenal. My problem with it is that I don't want to see them take snaps away from the guys that we have right now. The guys that were here last year and helped us win a Super Bowl. The guys that just came in that have really high hopes to get on that field. I don't want to see that happen. That's why Veach does what he does. This rotational thing. At some point, he's going to have to sign somebody, a number one wide receiver, to a longer term deal for Mahomes. He's going to have to do that. Especially when they find the right guy, that's what they'll do. But D-Hop's 31 years old. He's not that guy you're going to sign to a long term deal. So work with what you have. Figure out what you've got in your draft picks, what you've got in guys that were draft picks last year, and go from there. If you need him later on, he's made it very clear that he's not in a giant hurry to jump on a bandwagon somewhere, which that doesn't really mean anything. These guys say all kinds of shit, and half the time it doesn't mean nothing. OBJ said he didn't, he wouldn't didn't want to be the highest paid wide receiver that year or this year, and yet he's the highest paid wide receiver this year. So to me, that was a dumbass move. They paid way too much money for him, and I think you're going to see that that's it is what it is. And I almost feel the same way about Dehop. I think he's a guy that can help you. He's not an every down guy. He's not an every snap guy right now. And I don't know if he will be for the rest of his career. That's just my opinion. And I think he wants to be. As much as he says, OBJ said he didn't want to be the every down guy. He wanted to be in the background, just, doing what he did with the Rams. That's a lie. He wants to be the number one guy. So I still feel like there's teams out there that will pay him that need him more than we do, aka New England. They would pay him to bring him in because they've done nothing to help their quarterback. Nothing.
Hey,
And
well
he
now they
needs
have
help.
they have a real offensive coordinator this year, so they're moving up.
They are moving up a little. But they've done really nothing as far as weapons are concerned, I guess I should say, to help him. So that would be a team I could see it happen. I still feel like you're either going to see the Browns or the Jets. I feel like that's going to happen. And if it does, that's fine. But there is some interest with Kansas City, from what I'm told. It's not break the bank interest. It's if you want to play here, you want to win a ring, this is what you're going to play for. If you don't like it, there's other teams out there that you can go play for, have a larger base salary and not win a ring. Your choice.
Yeah.
And that's basically how they're leaving it. So
Look, I think your point about at some point Kansas City is going to need to get a number one wide receiver, preferably within the next couple of years, because Travis Kelce is now fighting against the clock, right? He has less years in front of him than he does behind him. And every great quarterback has some sort of number one wide receiver behind them. Peyton Manning had Reggie Wayne, Montana had Rice. I mean, Troy Aikman had Irving, and Matt Ryan had Julio Jones. So even that next tier of really good quarterback has that number one wide receiver, and Kansas City just has it in the form of a tight end. But if you're going to continue to move this offense forward, you need to get that next weapon. And some people thought that maybe Tyreek Hill was going to be that, but now we know that he moved. We traded him, and we need to find that next guy. And I know that DeAndre Hopkins, the time frame, he wouldn't be that guy, but Kansas City does need to find and draft their next number one wide receiver. And maybe they do find it somewhere in free agency where he's a guy that they pick up on the cheap and he just explodes on this roster and becomes the number one wide receiver, like a Kadarius Toney type deal, where it's just another team sort of reject, and he ends up on the roster, and they explode off, and they take off as the one combo.
And they may have already drafted him.
Maybe, yeah, Rashid Rice. Maybe Rice is that guy. We don't know, but Kansas City does need your whole point behind Kansas City needs to find a true number one wide receiver within the next couple of years. I totally agree with, because we don't know how much time Travis Kelce has left. I don't think Travis Kelce knows how much time he has left. It's really important to make sure that Patrick Mahomes, I almost said Peyton Manning, that Patrick Mahomes has weapons around him. I don't want to see Patrick Mahomes with nothing around him or limited weapons around him, because if that's the case, Brett Veach did his job wrong. I want the haters at the end of the Patrick Mahomes era to ask, well, he always had somebody around him. What would he have looked like if he never had a true number one wide receiver around him? That's what I want at the end of his career, because that means that this team was built correctly. You never left him out by himself. There was always a guy that he could depend on. There was always a security blanket. Like I said, now we just have it in the form of a tight end. But if you look at the elite wide receivers, the best of the best, the Michael Irvings, the Jerry Rices, those were the guys where it's like, man, when I'm in trouble, when it's 3rd and 5, I can throw it to him, and I can get 6 yards.
Yep.
You always need that guy, and it comes in different forms, right? Sometimes it's the speedy wide receiver that can just always seem to get open. Travis Kelsey's, he's got that shimmy, he's got that ability to find space. Some guys, it's just, I'm going to go up, I'm going to steal the ball away from you. 50-50 balls or 75-25 in my favor, right? There are different ways that you can do it, and Kansas City needs to find that guy. In
Yeah.
terms of DeAndre Hopkins, you know, if he comes to Kansas City, I'll be happy about it. I was never on board with like Odell coming here because I don't trust that injury history. I think DeAndre Hopkins is different, right? He missed time because of a PED suspension last year, and then towards the end of the season, there was talk about him. Maybe he could have played if he was on a competitive team, but with he just wasn't going to play on that crappy team down in Arizona. Um, you know, I think the value is still there, right? He's no longer a top 5 wide receiver, but I still think that he belongs, fringe 10, 9, 8 guy.
Yeah.
I still think that he can be a dominant wide receiver. And if you put him in an offense where he doesn't have to be that guy, because you also have to cover Travis Kelsey, well, I think he's going to look better too. And you put him in an offense that is an NFL offense and not a college offense, I think he'll look better.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I think, if DeAndre Hopkins comes here, I think he will look good. And Caleb says it every time on the show when we talk about this sort of situation. You either want the money or you want the ring. Kansas City is not going to go out and pay DeAndre Hopkins $18 million.
No.
I think there are desperate teams. I'm kind of upset at myself that I didn't think of Tennessee as an option. Like, if he ends up playing at Tennessee, I'm going to be kind of pissed at myself that I didn't think of Tennessee, because it does seem like that perfect spot. It's a mediocre team that has a quarterback, no weapons. They need to get a spark going, and they're sort of that fringe playoff team. That's the perfect kind of team that a number 1 wide receiver free agent would go to. And so if he ends up in Tennessee, I'm going to be kind of upset with myself that wasn't a team that was on our draft last week, because it's a perfect team for him to go to if he wants to get paid. So it's up to him at this point. I still, Kansas City would invite him with open arms. It just seems like the money is the biggest point. And the longer and longer this goes on, I think the further away he gets from Kansas City, because
I agree.
if he wants to come to Kansas City would make it work now. And we know Brett Veach, doesn't leave the door open. If it's not going to work, we're moving on. He doesn't.
Yeah, he'll hit you right in the ass with that door real quick.
Yeah, he's not going to wait outside your window with the boombox playing love songs. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
If it's not going to happen, we're going to wipe our hands with this. We're going to tell you have a good day, and we're going to send you out of here. That's it.
Exactly.
We're not going to worry about it. So the longer this goes on, I think the less likely it is that he ends up here in Kansas City.
And honestly, Veach has done it with better players. So he shut the door on better players. And in his little 5-year stint with Kansas City, he's not one to play with. He's not going to let a player dictate what he does or doesn't do. And honestly, Mahomes is the same way. He's got the same mindset. He's extremely competitive. He knows what he can do. He knows what he can help his guys do, because he knows he makes people better. He makes players better. He doesn't have to have a big name player. He hasn't, other than Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey, it's the only 2 names that he's had in the league. Since he's been in the league, it's really the only 2 names he's had. Juju was Juju. I'm not going to say he was a terrible player, because he wasn't. He helped us a lot to win a Super Bowl. But again, he isn't that, stereotypical big name elite wide receiver that everybody in Chiefs Kingdom wants and has always wanted us to have. We proved that we don't need it. We've proven that we can win with very minimal, because Mahomes is so good at spreading the ball around.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm not going to be upset if he shows up and he ends up being in a uniform. I'm not going to be upset if he doesn't. It's not going to hurt my feelings either way. I feel like we have an extremely strong wide receiver room, and I think it's just going to continue to get better. as long as Mahomes does what he does, like he's done with every other wide receiver we brought in, they're all going to look like kings at the end of the season. Whoever it ends up being. We talk about it all the time that we're not going to go with a fullback. In fact, we had Joe Valerio on our show last night. If anybody that doesn't know who he is, 7-year NFL vet, center, played tight end.
Check that out.
Check that out.
It was definitely, that's probably the best show that we've done.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
So if check out our other channel and listen to that. If you are only going to watch one of our shows on the other network, that would be the one. It was a great show.
It was a great show. I mean, it's been nice to have a lot of the guys on. We've had Tim Grunhard on, we've had him on, we've had JJ Burden, which I love. I love when he comes on. We've had Willie Rofe on. We've had a lot of guys on, but Joe really, he explains things.
It's a great
in the game. A great storyteller. It's fun to talk about the things that. It's always fun for me because I was around those guys, and it's always fun to reminisce with most of those guys that got to see the stuff that I got to see, and it's just fun to talk about. I mean, him and I both are old fucks. We we were around, in the 90s and watched. I didn't play, of course, but I got to spend a lot of time with that team, and it was just fun to watch, and it's always fun to listen to these guys talk about it. And Joe understands the game so well. He has his own podcast. He still loves the Chiefs. He lives in Philly, where he was born, and he's a great football guy. So if you really want to understand the game, listen to the man talk. He's going to come back on. In fact, we texted back and forth, and he definitely wants to come back on the show. So we'll have a lot more Joe, hopefully during the season as well, because he loves to talk football.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things to where it's got to be a good fit, and it's got to be for the right money. And we're not going to put ourselves in cap hell. We're not going to be that team.
Yeah, I don't think Kansas City is that team. The reason that the Ravens were able to sign Odell for that contract is because they added 4 void years at the end of that contract. So
exactly,
they're going to have dead cap money for the next 4 years for a 1-year contract. Kansas City's not going to do that.
No.
That's just not. The Saints have done that for years, and every single year they have to cut players. They have to move a bunch of money around. Kansas City's not going to do that. Buffalo, after re-signing Leonard Floyd, they have very little cap space left over. So yeah. I think Buffalo is sort of out of the running now, just because, when you make a move like that, you don't then turn around and sign a top wide receiver, because the deal they gave them is not the one that I expect Chris Jones to sign, where it's going to be a huge signing bonus and then base salary backed up on the end of it. That's not the kind of deal that Leonard Floyd signed. So, they're taking a cap hit now. So they're left with very little cap space. So I would even pull Buffalo out of it. I just have a feeling that DeAndre Hopkins is going to go to a team that has a decent amount of cap space and is sort of a fringe playoff team.
Yeah. Like the Browns, the Jaguars,
Lions, Browns. Like, those are the kind of teams that speak out to me as teams that they would love to pull in a DeAndre Hopkins. They have the space for it. And I think DeAndre Hopkins could justify to himself, he's like, oh, I'm good enough. I can make this a Super Bowl team while also getting paid. So,
and why wouldn't you want to come into a division? I think you would rather be in the AFC. You would want to come into the AFC division just because you've got a lot more chances in the AFC than you do the NFC.
Yeah, I mean
you only got a couple of options.
Those 3 teams we listed off, at least in theory, have good quarterbacks, right? Yeah. Trevor Lawrence, good quarterback. I mean, I think fringe top 10. If he plays like he did last year, again, I would put him in the top 10. Jared Goff, that offense was one of the best offenses in terms of, yards per game and EPA. That was one of the best offenses throughout the NFL year. So if you're DeAndre Hopkins, I think you could justify to yourself that I can make this offense better. And then he literally played with Deshaun Watson at Deshaun Watson's peak. So
Yeah.
once again, you could justify to yourself, oh, I can make this offense great. So I do. The door is kind of cracked for him to end up in Kansas City, and I think that if he comes here, he still is that guy. He could still be a great wide receiver here in Kansas City, especially because he doesn't have to be that number one guy. DeAndre Hopkins is not going to get all the double teams like he did when he was playing with the Cardinals or when he was playing with the Texans. He will not have to, pull extra safeties and extra corners because you have to worry about Travis Kelce, and you also have to worry about the other guys that are on the field. Kadarius Toney, with his speed and athleticism, is going to demand extra help over the top. Now, when he's on the field.
Yeah.
So you also have to worry about the scheme here as well. So this isn't like teams can just man to man or play a deep cover two anymore. You really have to split your defense out to cover everybody. I do think it's a really good fit. How could you not? It's just whether or not that he wants to get paid $18 million. And based on all the reporting out there, it seems like DeAndre Hopkins wants to get paid 18, 19, $20 million, which is what he was going to get paid before he got cut by Arizona. And I just don't see Kansas City financially being able to afford that without adding a bunch of void years on the end of the deal. And Brett Veach doesn't seem like a kind of GM to do that because that messes up your plan years out.
I agree. I mean, it's just a situation that I feel like I think the Browns are probably the best fit for him. He has a good chemistry with Watson. They are a fringe playoff team right now, and he would make them a playoff team. And I think that would be the team that would pay him. He has an opportunity to shine. I feel like I still am holding to my guns when it comes to the AFC, and I feel like we might end up playing in the AFC Championship game against the Jaguars. They've got a great head coach. They've got great weapons. They've got a great quarterback. They've got a decent defense. They played really well towards the end of the season last year, and I think they're just going to play even better this year. I feel like they're going to be tougher than a lot of other football teams that people have higher than them or up on their top 5 list of great teams in the AFC. That's just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. But let's jump to a commercial and we'll go to the next segment.
Underdog Fantasy is here to save your post-fantasy football season blues. The easiest place to play and win with the Underdog Fantasy app. Get up to 20 times your money in a single night with our Pick'em contests. Grab some insurance when setting your picks and win even when one pick fails. Go online now and use the promo code ChiefsFocus to double your deposit up to $100. Sit gingerbread, good girl.
Good God, that dog. Hey, everybody, I mean, every time I see that dog, make sure you double up your bonus and get in while you got the chance. You got some playoff stuff going on right now. You can get in there and make some money. Golden Knights are on their way to the first Stanley Cup, it seems like. So you can go in there and make a bet. Maybe they sweep them. They get the Stanley Cup. You make a bunch of money because I'm sure the odds are pretty low on them sweeping completely through the playoffs. So or through the finals. Let's go into this. You mentioned Buffalo Bills earlier. Let's talk about Josh Allen for a minute. So everybody has made a huge ordeal about Josh Allen being on the front of Madden. He's the new Madden front man. I mean, what do you want to say? He's on the cover of Madden. Do I think he belongs there? Do you think he belongs there? We don't know. Is there other quarterbacks that could have been on there? Maybe. What's your opinion on Josh Allen being on base? Now they base it, from what I understand, Madden bases it on the prior year. So if you're basing it on the prior year's performance and you look at all the quarterbacks in the NFL, who would you think would be a better fit on the cover of Madden this year other than Josh Allen?
Well,
I have somebody in my mind, but I mean, you go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if you put Patrick Mahomes on it again, just because I just think that he's already been on it twice, right? So just from a like marketing standpoint, I don't know if you should put him on again. I know you wanted to limit it down to AFC, but I do think Jalen Hurts would have been a good option, just
Absolutely.
because he sort of was that up and coming guy, right? Made it to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts to me was sort of an obvious selection to do it. Um, I think if you're talking specifically on the AFC side, man, maybe I might get flamed by this, but
I know who you're going to say.
I don't know. I think there's been some pretty amazing wide receiver. I mean, once I go back to the end, Justin Jefferson would have been. I know he's the Vikings and that's the NFC. I was thinking, maybe Tyreek Hill, just because of the great year that he had, but then Justin Jefferson had a statistically a better year. So I don't know. I just think that it's like Buffalo's sliding to me.
They are
Buffalo's
sliding.
third best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
And I think by the end of the year, maybe they're the fourth or fifth best team. Maybe the Jaguars jump the Bills, and the Jaguars are the third best team in the AFC by the end of the year. So I don't know. It just seemed to came out of left field that, oh, we're putting Josh Allen on it. It's like, what did he do?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, I was pretty amazed given the fact that there were so many talented players in the league that didn't blow. Well, first of all, didn't lead the league in turnovers, and then also didn't blow a playoff game the way he blew a playoff game. I just feel like there's so many more talented players. AFC, NFC, it doesn't really matter. I mean, hell, I would have rather seen Brock Purdy on there than Josh Allen at this point. And I know you don't like Brock Purdy, but um, I'm just saying I don't think this was the right year to put him on there with the year that he had last year. I just feel like it was not the right time. You're right. I mean, there could have been. I think Tyreek Hill's already been on Madden once, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I could be wrong, but I think he was on there once. But you've got so many other players in the league that were statistically better that just honestly, I mean, whether it be quarterback or wide receiver, it doesn't really matter. There was a lot more talent out there from a 2022 perspective than what Josh Allen was. So I feel like it was just kind of a. I don't know if the Bills paid them to do it. I really, or the NFL. I don't know what happened, but to me, I think it was just weird that he was on there. But I agree with you. I think it would probably, in my opinion, probably should have been either Jalen Hurts. It could have been a Justin Jefferson, of course. I mean, he was great last year. He was the actual security blanket of all security blankets last year when it really came down to it. Um, I don't know, man. I just think it was a weird situation. I don't know why they did it. If I remember, and you can look this up if you want. I think Saquon Barkley was on the front of Madden prior to his injury. At some point in his first few years, he was on Madden, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but let's also look at this. Madden has a very strange um, way of doing things at certain times because if you look at it, Aaron Rodgers has never been on the front of Madden. And
that probably would have been a better one because I think more people would have just been intrigued by the whole Rodgers in a Jets uniform.
Exactly. And the fact that he's went back-to-back MVPs. Yeah,
he's one of the best to ever pick up a football.
Absolutely. I feel like this is a guy that's been in the league 17 years and he's never seen the cover of Madden. And I feel like he would have been a better choice. Yeah, he's weird in some ways. He's very eccentric. Drinks too much, probably. Allegedly. Maybe has other issues that we don't know about. Who knows? Who cares? The point is it's what he does on the football field. And Aaron Rodgers is one of the best. You could arguably say he's probably top 8 ever in the league to play the game, if not higher.
I mean, I think you can literally have a real conversation about how if he doesn't win a Super Bowl with the Jets, he might be one of the most underperforming postseason quarterbacks in NFL history because he's just that good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's actually crazy that the Packers had back-to-back, how long was Favre on the Packers? 15 years? 12 years, something like that?
Yeah.
You had back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and for almost 30 years of quarterback play, and you have 2 Super Bowls between them?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about underperforming franchises.
Yeah. Yeah. That just tells you what we always preach. When it all boils down to it, at the end of the day, shit rolls downhill and everything starts from the top when it comes to these organizations. That's why you see the Chargers in the position they've been in. That's why you see Green Bay in the position they've been in. Chicago, which at one time was one of the best teams in the league in the 80s. You go through all the progressions of all of these teams that you look at now and go, God, that was just, why do they suck so bad? And why can't they just get to this point? It starts at the top. It starts from the ownership and works its way down. And there's so many teams out there that have struggled. I mean, it's just no different than Paul Brown. I mean, he was one of the most hated guys ever as an owner.
I mean,
ever. And his son's not much better.
When you just,
excuse me,
just start another franchise a city away to spite your other team.
Yeah.
I mean,
honestly, and his son's just as hated. So, I mean, he's not invited to any of the owners meetings, like the dinners. He doesn't get invited to those. He's like that guy that, they tell him we're going to go to Olive Garden and they end up at Buca because they just don't want him to show up. So I don't know, man. To me, I think a lot of it just starts from the top. And when you look at some of these teams that have struggled over the years, I mean, Miami had a terrible owner, probably one of the worst owners in football. Yeah, he spent a shit ton of money this year, but he's a terrible, terrible person. I mean, the list just goes on and on. The Browns are just a low market team with very little upside. In fact, the entire state has very little upside. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick, but that's a really hard state to really think, okay, wow, man. I love that freaking state. I love every city. I mean, Cleveland, I just want to go there and sniff all the pollution. I love this place. It's just one of those things that you just look at and go, okay, low market's low market. We're still considered somewhat of a low market team. Strangely enough, we're still a low market football team compared to some in the league. You got the Cowboys, always been a big market team. You got 49ers. The Eagles were a big market team. The Giants used to be a big market team, kind of still are to some degree. Then you have, we were one of the lowest, kind of like the Royals were, and still are for that matter. Low market. Hell, when I was there with the Royals, their entire salary was $41 million. And that included managers. I mean, sure, everybody. That was everybody. I think I even included concession stand workers. And then you had the Yankees that were $155 million. So we were in that boat for a long time. We were a low market football team, Midwest team that didn't have a whole lot. We tried. The 90s really changed our entire culture and who we were, our identity, I guess, as a football team. But it didn't really kick into gear until the Andy Reid era. That's when it started to progressively get better. And then when Mahomes came, everything changed. But I don't know, man. I think a lot of the problem you see in the league right now is just bad ownership and people that don't know how to hire. And then people that get in their own fucking way. I mean, think about it, dude. How many fucking owners out there get in their own way?
Yeah, I mean, to me, an owner needs to be, in the facility and, around the team, but you hire coaches and presidents of football for a reason, and
Yeah.
that's to let the football people do football things. So you need to be there. You need to make sure, you need to know what's going on. When you work for a business and the owners come in and they want to just throw their weight around once every 5 weeks and then they leave again, and then you just do whatever you were doing beforehand. Well, that's frustrating, but it's also frustrating when you were hired to do a job, you're doing your job, and then that owner of said business comes in and is just telling you, you know, what you need to do, and it's like, what are you doing here? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but if you're there consistently, you're walking through the halls, your office is set up. Maybe you're not working on football things, maybe you're working on your other business stuff, but you're there.
Yeah.
And
Not everybody was Lamar Hunt. Not everybody was, as much as it pains me to say this, and Al Davis.
yeah,
Those guys were football guys. They knew what they were doing. But when they didn't know what they were doing, they brought people in that did.
yeah,
Al Davis was a little different. I mean, he was kind of the Jerry Jones to a degree. He felt like he knew everything no matter what. Uh, Lamar was smarter than that. Lamar said, "You know what? I don't know this end of it. I don't know this part of this game. Yes, I built the NFL. I merged this together. I was the sole guy that really did this. But in retrospect, he's an oil guy. Came from oil. I mean, Jerry Jones. He wasn't like a big football guy. Yeah, he played in college, but he wasn't like a big football guy. And he actually kicks his own self in the balls every time he opens his mouth. Every time he says something or does something, it's a mistake.
I mean, if he didn't fire his head coach back in the '90s, but maybe they would have continued to be successful. I mean, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh God, that was a mess. That Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson situation was.
Yeah, I don't even want to open that can of worms.
Holy crap, that was a disaster. But and it was all over a girl. I mean, it's just fucking stupid. But regardless, it's just. I think owners. It's kind of like if you're a car guy and you have guys that buy into dealerships. Okay, car dealerships. Marcus Allen did it in Kansas City. Okay, his name was Marcus Allen Ford here, Marcus Allen this, Marcus Allen that. Marcus Allen got paid 3% to put his name on the front of a building. He was not a car guy. He liked to drive cars, but he wasn't a car guy. John Elway did the exact same thing in Denver. He bought a bunch of car dealerships. Some of them did well, some of them didn't. He ended up getting rid of them, all of them. I think he has one left, maybe, if I'm not mistaken, or at least his name's on it. But you have to, if you're going to be an owner of something, and you want to be completely involved in it, you have to be that guy. If you want to be an owner of a football team and be completely involved, you need to be a football guy. If you want to be a car guy, or own a car dealership, you need to be a car guy. You need to know the ins and outs, front to back, side to side, up and down. That's just the way it is. And I think that's a lot of the problem when you look at some of the owners in the league, like Stephen Ross. He's not a football guy. He's an idiot. He is a very rich idiot that knows nothing about football and wants to pretend that he does. He's a poser. That happens so often, more often than not. Clark Hunt's very smart. He knows what he's good at. He knows what he's not good at. He knows he's good at writing checks. Knows how to make the money. He wasn't his dad. His dad was a different guy. That's where owners make their mistake. They just stick their foot in their mouth. They open the wrong doors. They make the bad decisions because they're the ones cutting the checks. I don't know. The Chargers are a great example of that. They had, we talk about this all the time. The Chargers had one of the best, well-rounded teams as far as players were concerned for a very long time. When you had Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates and all these guys that were together and a great defense, and they couldn't get over the hump. Why? Because they had shitty head coaches and they had a terrible front office that brought in shitty head coaches.
I mean, the Chargers, because I think at some point Phillip Rivers is going to go into the Hall of Fame, right? I just think at some point, because the NFL every year puts a certain number of guys in the Hall of Fame, Phillip Rivers will eventually go in because of a short ballot one year.
Yeah,
He won't be a first ballot, but Phillip Rivers will eventually make it into the Hall of Fame.
yeah, he threw
And
for like 75 million yards. I mean, it wasn't like he
if
didn't,
Justin Herbert continues on his quality of play, Justin Herbert will probably make it into the Hall of Fame. There's a chance that the Chargers will have back-to-back franchise quarterbacks and have no Super Bowls out of it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
The Chargers have completely ruined the early part of Justin Herbert's career. Justin Herbert is probably the fourth best quarterback in the NFL, and they have one playoff appearance on his rookie deal.
And here's the sad part, Quentin, is this is the suckiest part about all of this. And I feel terrible for that kid because he's a very humble kid. He's very likable. He's very competitive, but he's a very likable kid. He's not the Joe Burrow that's a jack off that wants to stick a cigar in his mouth and act like a dick. He's a very likable kid that is extremely uber talented, and his career is being wasted. And if I hope and pray he doesn't sign another contract with them.
I mean, he doesn't have much of a choice though, because you're a quarterback, right? And if you don't sign your extension, you're going to get franchise tagged. And if you still don't sign it, you're going to get franchise tagged again. And you're going to lose out. And then let's say you hit free agency after that. Well, you're going to get signed. Yes, you're going to get signed to a huge deal. But now you're 2 years behind, 3 years behind, because, teams sign you to contracts early.
Yeah, they sign you in your fourth year usually.
Yeah, so. They sign you there and that sort of buys out your final year of your contract. So you're 3 years behind, which means if you signed your contract when it was originally offered to you, at that point you'd be 1 year away from signing a new contract, or you'd be in negotiations to sign a third contract in the NFL. So you're leaving so much money on the table and there's no guarantee that at some point within that 3 year time span, you don't have some sort of God forbid, some sort of career ending injury, or an injury that, alters your career. I hurt my arm or my legs, and, I will never be the same quarterback ever again. Like something like that doesn't happen, and you're never the same, and you'll never see another huge payday. You become a backup quarterback for the rest of your career if you're still in the league. So quarterbacks are such a weird position because they get paid the most, but if you're a franchise quarterback like Justin Herbert is, you're pretty much stuck with that franchise. Otherwise, you're leaving so much money on the field. Justin Herbert will just sign with the Chargers again.
Well, here's and you can look at it from this perspective too. And I guess maybe given the fact that the market is so high on quarterbacks right now, especially, top 5 quarterbacks in the league, the franchise tag is not chump change, and it's just going to get better.
No, but you're still leaving, tens of millions of dollars on the field. That was my problem with Lamar Jackson, and he said that he made up all that money, but you didn't.
No,
because you left 3 years of another contract on the field, and you would almost be at the time to sign your third contract in the NFL. So you left so much money on the field because you refused to have an agent. That's the same thing. I think the Kirk Cousins sort of way of doing it, the reason why Kirk Cousins was able to get away with it was because Kirk Cousins wasn't going to sign a contract, worth that much more than the franchise tag. Whereas Justin Herbert is going to sign a $55 million a year contract. And I don't even know what the hit is for a quarterback. I mean, I can look it up real quick, but I mean, it's got to be. I don't even, because it's the top. Is it the top 5 at your position?
Top 5 is what they base it on. I guarantee you by next year,
plus 10%.
Yes, I guarantee you by next year, a franchise tag will be $40 million. It was going to be $32 million exclusively.
It's $32 million this year.
Yeah, that was what it was going to be for Lamar.
Yeah, it's $32 million.
Only that's exclusively, though. That's an exclusive contract.
He can almost double that. He possibly could double that. And
I get it.
if he were to sign a deal, that doesn't even include any sort of, signing bonus that he gets. So I just think that if you're just leaving so much money on the field, and your time frame in the NFL to get the bag is so short. So I just think that it would be a mistake for you not to take that franchise tag. There are so many positions where it would just not be in your best interest to roll it into the franchise tag year.
I don't know. I feel like if he, the Chargers have a different mindset when it comes to things. I don't know if they'll double tag him, but if they tag him they could. I don't know if they will or not, but they could. But if he signed, say next year,
I'm an NFL franchise, I'm not letting my franchise quarterback just walk there.
Well, I understand.
Damn right, I'll franchise tag him twice. Because in 2024, the franchise tag is $38 million. That's a bargain. Yeah. That's bargain bin numbers.
Well, that's what I was saying, though. I mean, a franchise tag for a top 5 quarterback, it may be more than that. It may end up being more than that. Really, what's going to base that number is what Joe Burrow ends up signing for. What that's going to base a lot of it there's what Burrow signs for.
So even if it, and it won't. One contract, isn't going to blow the franchise tag that much out. But let's add $6 million to it. That's still a bargain.
It is. $40 million a year. That's basically what they just paid Daniel Jones.
Which Justin Herbert is light years ahead of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is Kirk Cousins that can run.
That's exactly who he is. I guess I feel like if he was he's a big kid, relatively smart. I feel like if he can get away with 1 year of a franchise tag, make close to $40 million, and then say, look, I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't care if you guys want me here. If you franchise tag me, that's great. But you may not get all the production out of me that you really think you're going to get because I'm burned out. I don't want my career wasted. Maybe, just maybe, he could get lucky enough to go sign somewhere that he actually has a shot. And I wish he would have been drafted by any other football team. I really do. It sucks to say, but I wish he would have been drafted by anybody else besides the Chargers. Even the fucking Raiders would have been better than that. But it's a terrible football team. And Mark Davis is an idiot as well. It's so hard because you got guys out there that are so good, uber talented, and their careers are wasted. DeAndre Hopkins' first 5 years was wasted with the Texans. That was a notorious team for wasting talent and wasting years of a player. The thing about a quarterback is that they really have for the most part, have the most longevity of most players in the NFL, of every player in the NFL. Most quarterbacks last to a minimum of 10 years. I don't know too many of them that have been out, really good ones, I could say. They're not out because of injury or whatever, So I feel like if he played 4 or 5 years with them and then was able to go somewhere and play another 10 years with a good football team, he'd have a much better opportunity to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's just that, he'd have
hard to weigh it out.
Yeah, he just have to really hate him because, you're leaving literally tens of millions of dollars on the field if you're just going to try and roll with the franchise tag because, he's worth almost double the franchise tag at this point.
Right now he is, yeah. Yeah,
so
right now he is.
That's just so much money to leave on the field. We're not talking just a couple $1,000,000 to move on. We're talking literally double what he could earn. And like I said, and it gives you the security of having that contract where, some of these contracts, if he signs a 4-year deal, he's able to roll into the next one and roll into the next one. And it's just, you're giving yourself a lot of security by signing that contract a year early. It's like in baseball, when they buy out your contract in arbitration, where they just sign you to that 7-year deal. And 3 of those years were you arguing with how much you're worth in arbitration. It's like, yeah, I'm going to take that deal. Sure. Maybe it's a little less, but the security that I'm going to get is worth that. And that's what these quarterback contracts are. It's like, okay, maybe I'm not going to maximize every penny that I can get, but I'm already going to get paid a whole bunch. And you're giving me security over the next 3, 4, 5 seasons. Yes, please. Where do
Yeah.
I sign?
And I think a lot of that's going to depend on your guaranteed money.
Yeah, and
You know,
let me ask you this: who signs first, Herbert or Burrow?
I got a feeling it's going to end up being Burrow. I do. I think it's going to be Burrow. He's already pushing for a contract, and even though he says, "Oh, I'll take less for the team," and he's not going to. He's going to want $65 million a year, and they're going to give it to him. And I hope they do. I really do. I hope they give him every dollar of it,
Yeah,
because when they do, and they can't sign anybody else to surround him because he's not good enough to make anybody better, then they'll see the true colors. And they'll be paying a guy $65 million a year to fucking lose, and that's what I want to see happen. I'm sorry, but I do.
I think Herbert signs first because Burrow's contract will mean. How do I phrase this? I think if Burrow gets if Burrow gets $65 million a year, let's just throw that out there. I don't know how much it's. There's not really any reporting right now on how much that contract is worth. So let's just say Burrow signs up for a $65 million a year. Herbert's not going to look at that and be like, I deserve more than that. I'm better than Burrow.
No, he's not.
But
He's not going to do
on
that.
the flip side, let's say Herbert signs for, $63 million. Burrow's going to look at that and is like, he won't sign for 65 because he's going to, his argument will be, well, I'm worth more than just $2 million more.
Yeah, because I've been to a Super Bowl and lost. Yeah,
right.
Exactly,
and he has an argument there.
Yeah, it's a valid argument.
He is, over the time frame, Joe Burrow's been a much better quarterback than Justin Herbert. So that's why I think it's Herbert's going to sign first, because the Burrow contract to him doesn't matter.
I think
Burrow
know
has a benefit to wait it out.
I don't know, and I can't fully get on board with the fact that he's been a much better quarterback than Herbert. I feel like he's in a system and in a division that makes him a better quarterback. And plus, it's been a very schedule friendly for him compared to the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers have to face us twice a year. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. And plus, they don't have the organization. They don't have the coaching staff. They didn't have the strength of schedule, the ease of the strength of schedule that Cincinnati's had for the entirety of Joe Burrow's career. He's never been. I mean, I think the hardest schedule he had was 27th in the league. So Herbert can't say that.
He has won his division, so he has a harder schedule because he's facing ones, whereas Herbert has never won his division, so he's facing a little bit there. I mean, if we're gonna have this conversation is going to go on for way too long.
Well, it will. But I mean, the whole thing is, I think their division's a lot weaker. I mean, when you look at the division that Cincinnati is in compared to the division that we're in and Herbert's in, it's a weaker division.
I don't know, because, since he's been there, the Steelers haven't had a losing record. The Ravens have always been in the top of the AFC conversation. Even when Lamar Jackson would go down late in the year, they were still a dominant team early there. And the Browns had a couple of years where they were relevant when Baker Mayfield was their quarterback. Meanwhile, here in the AFC West, since the entire time Herbert's been in the division, both the Broncos and the Raiders have been, burning piles of trash.
Yeah. Well,
I would say
I think the Raiders were a little bit better than the Broncos, but for the most part, the Raiders were a little bit better than the Broncos.
So sure, Herbert's had to face Kansas City twice a year, but he's also got to face the Broncos and the Raiders, which are much worse teams than the Browns and the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns, I don't know. The Browns have Cincinnati's number. I mean, I think he's 1-4 against the Browns.
Divisional games, man, they're weird.
Yeah. So, and even when the Browns were, they had a backup quarterback and half their players were on, a stretcher, they were still beating Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. I don't know that you can say that if Herbert was with, say, the Browns at that time period over Baker Mayfield. I feel like the Browns would have gotten further than they did with Baker Mayfield, because Herbert is a much more well-rounded quarterback, mentally there. And when I say that, I mean he's humble, he's smart, he's got a high football IQ. He's just a better football player than Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I think that you don't see him overthrow a ton of guys, and
Make smart decisions.
and Herbert doesn't get happy feet in the pocket. So yeah, I
No.
mean Herbert's a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody was arguing the opposite of that.
No. I just feel like, and look, if you really think about it, look at how Cincinnati has started out every one of their seasons. You got three teams that started out really strong. Okay, you got the Steelers that were whatever, but then you also had the Ravens that started out really strong, a completely healthy football team. You had the Browns that started out that even though they had turmoil to some degree, they were still a healthy football team. And every year they start out with a losing record. It just happens to be that when Lamar goes down and then Baker Mayfield has a meltdown or they lose three or four of their players, then or they have a interim Freddie Kitchens that should be in a kitchen at Waffle House instead of coaching a football team, then they start to come on strong. It's almost like an anomaly. I guess it's like, Herbert has beaten us. He's the only quarterback in the AFC, I think, that's beaten Mahomes.
I mean,
But Mahomes didn't play that game.
Joe Burrow has 3-1 record.
No, I'm talking about in the West.
Oh yeah, because the Broncos haven't beaten us, and I think the only game the Raiders have beaten him was the Ring Around the Rosie, around Arrowhead.
Yeah, that was it, and it was a 1-point game.
Yeah, and I think
so
have they beat him twice?
Who?
I think have the Chargers beat him twice? I think they've beaten us twice.
No, well, not with Herbert. They beat us once, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think
because there was I don't know if Tyrod Taylor beat Mahomes. I think Herbert's beaten us twice, both here, and then the Raiders have beat us once, and obviously we haven't lost to the Broncos since Peyton Manning's been there.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just a weird situation, and I feel for the kid.
Many wins. They all just fuzz together,
And by the way, this year, or was it this year? Yeah, I think it's who is it that Mahomes hasn't played yet? There's one team that he hasn't beaten, and I think he beats them this year. I mean, he wins. He will have beaten every team in the NFL if he. What team is it, man? There's one team that Mahomes hasn't played yet. That when he does,
the Chiefs.
No, that he hasn't beaten yet.
He hasn't beaten the Chiefs.
Well, yeah. There's one team, and I can't think of who it is, but I think it's this year that he clears every team in the NFL that he's already beaten, at least once. And I can't remember who that team is right now. Do we play the Bucs this year?
Yeah, but he beat the Bucs in the regular season.
Yeah, he did.
But no, we don't face the Bucs.
Who is it that we play this year that he hasn't beaten yet? There's a team that we have played.
I'm looking at the schedule and just trying to think. Who they wouldn't have beaten.
I can't think of who it is, but I know I read something or I heard something that this was the year that Mahomes, in the first part of the season, did
they beat the Packers in the Jordan Love game?
Yes. Yeah, that was when his mom was sitting up on the wall.
Oh yeah. God, has he beat the Dolphins?
Maybe that's who it is. Maybe it's Miami that we haven't played and beaten yet. Maybe that's who it is.
It's got to either be the Dolphins or the Vikings.
I think we played the Vikings and beat them, but I could be wrong. But it's one of those two teams. You're right. And it might be the Vikings. Maybe that's who it is. No, we played the Vikings and beat them.
I know we played them. We
beat them
just because of the schedule. Because if we've played the Packers and the Bears in the same season, we obviously had to play the Vikings and Lions as well. Because
we beat them. Yeah, we beat them.
So it's got to be the Dolphins then.
It's got to be the Dolphins. So that's who it is. I mean, once he wins that game
in Germany.
Yeah, he's beaten every single team in basically his first 5 years as a starter or 5.5 years as a starter, which is pretty unheard of. I don't know if that'll be a record. Actually, I think from what I understand, that'll be a record as far as the time span of beating every team in the NFL. So, I mean, it's hard to. I just feel getting back to Herbert. I feel bad for the kid because he got drafted by a terrible football team, and they've got a terrible head coach. And I think he's going to be. Look, if Staley doesn't make the playoffs this year, or at least win, even if he makes it and doesn't win a playoff game, he's out. And I think their GM is out as well. I know Staley's on the hot seat anyway.
I know. Well, I just feel like they're going to be another 10-7 team.
I feel like the same.
They're going to be 10-7. They're probably going to be the number one wild card team, and they're going to go to whoever, and they're probably going to lose in the first round.
Yeah. So, and if that happens, I mean, honestly, that would be an indication that one, Staley needs to go, and then also Herbert really needs to reconsider what he's going to do.
Yeah, he's going to sign a contract here in the next couple months.
Yeah, that would suck if he does. I mean, I hope it's a short-term contract. I just hope it's short-term.
4 years. Because
maybe get out in 3.
1 year of that 4-year contract is the buyout of the final year of the rookie contract. And then, a lot of the 3 years is a normal contract, but really it'll be a 2 years on there because that last year is not a real year for quarterbacks because by the time that year rolls around, you're signing another contract.
Yeah, you know what I hope happens? Honestly, I hope he's smart enough and his agent's smart enough to give him an out. Instead of it just being an out for the team, I want him to have an out. I want him to say, okay, well, you know what?
His best option if he wants to get out is to sign a 3-year deal with the team and to have a clause in there, a no trade clause / no franchise tag clause, because who was it? Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins? I don't remember. There was a quarterback that signed a contract, and inside that contract, there was a no franchise tag clause in there. So
that was
Aaron it
Rodgers.
Lamar Jackson?
No, Lamar Jackson had that. No, he didn't. He was going to be tagged, and then you're right. It was Lamar because he was going to be tagged, and then
I think it was Lamar Jackson was the one that inside his new contract he added the no franchise tag clause. So if Herbert really wants to get out, he signs a deal with the Chargers, plays the next few seasons with them, but inside that contract he has the no franchise tag clause. So then he can actually hit free agency without giving up any of the money.
Exactly, and just get the hell on.
Yeah, that's really his best way to do it.
You know where I got to tell you, on the NFC side, if he went to the NFC, can you imagine him with just say the Vikings and the team that they had last year?
Yeah,
because he's much better quarterback than Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Or even think about, man, he's actually better than Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
And
he might be the best quarterback in the NFC.
Oh, he would definitely be the best quarterback in the NFC.
Because depending on what you feel about Jalen Hurts at the end of the year, at worst, he's the second. It just depends on how you feel about Jalen Hurts at this point. But
I have mixed feelings about Jalen Hurts. And the only reason I have mixed feelings is because he had one good season.
That's my problem, is he had, one good season and like 3 games.
Yeah, and a very, very, very favorable schedule.
Just a great team around him. Best offensive line, second best defensive line.
Yeah, second best defensive line. And honestly, I mean, I don't know. His defensive line wasn't that great either because they didn't get to Mahomes.
So
0 sacks, 6 pressures. That was a historic team. Did you know that, Quentin?
Yeah,
that was an historic defensive line. That didn't put a sack on Mahomes and didn't even get more than 6 pressures on him.
No, yeah, I think he would probably be the best quarterback on the NFC side because if we're being honest, the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL are on the AFC side.
Yeah.
Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you really wanted to, I guess you could throw in Lamar Jackson to some degree just because of his mobility, but I don't know if he's the 5th best quarterback.
Throw Aaron Rodgers at 5.
That's what I would say. Is Aaron
So
Rodgers is
the
probably in
first
their
five
top five.
quarterbacks are the in the AFC.
Yeah. The NFL actually had Lamar Jackson ranked, I want to say eighth in the NFL. Yeah, eighth. I think they had him eighth in the NFL. So I don't know. I think Herbert was actually ahead of him as far as NFL.com was concerned, and their writers and their analysts, they had him above Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I think a recency bias has something to do with that.
Yeah, I agree too. Yeah, I agree with that.
But I don't
So,
know if you make, you lead your team to the Super Bowl, and I mean, he played a fantastic game. So, I mean, he deserves a ton of credit for that. I think he deserves to be, on the back end of that top 10.
yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that he played a good game, especially given the fact that, and look, man, he had an historically good wide receiver. Okay, it wasn't like he was playing with a bunch of rookies out there. He had a great wide receiver. He had a great tight end. Um, his running backs didn't do shit, but the fact that he's able to be as mobile as he is, and he had AJ Brown out there. Is it Tyler Boyd? Is that their tight end? Who's their tight? No, who's their tight end? What's his name? I can't think of his name right now. Not Tyler Boyd. Damn it, I can't think of their tight end, but he's good. He's a good tight end. Damn. I don't know why I can't think of his name. But anyway, he had a really good supporting cast for the most part. So it wasn't like he had 7 or 8 rookies out on the field playing like we did. So, and he didn't have a bum foot. So he was able to run. He was able to make those runs. He was able to, I mean, and when he did throw some bombs, his shoulder was hurt, but it wasn't hurt enough to where he couldn't throw a 50-yard bomb downfield because A.J. Brown caught one. So it's just one of those situations that I feel like he was a little bit overhyped given his strength of schedule, the weapons that he had around him. I think it was a little overhyped there, but we'll have to see this year. We'll see when he doesn't have his offensive coordinator. They don't have the same defensive coordinator. All those 36-year-old players or 35-year-old players are now 36. One of them's turning 37 in Fletcher Cox. So we'll just have to see how they turn out this year and how well he actually plays. He's still going to have A.J. Brown. He's still going to have his tight end. He's still going to have the same offensive line. So they did add a bunch of players. Let's just see if those players pan out. If they have the coaching staff to be able to make those players better and put them on the field year one, like we did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it really boils down to. How many teams do you know, Quentin? I mean, I've been around a long time, but I don't remember a football team that has been able to put 10 rookies on a team, active rookies, and have 7 of them basically play the entire season. 3 of them that were rotational pieces and win a Super Bowl, especially in skill positions. I mean, serious hardcore skill positions like corners, wide receivers, edge rusher. I mean, you're talking about that's an historic win. No matter how you look at it, that's an historic win. Nobody can say they've ever done that. I don't know it. I don't think there's ever been. Well, I know there's never been a team that won a Super Bowl with 7 rookies, active rookies playing. I know that because that's a record. Another one of Mahomes' records, another one of the Chiefs' records. But to have 10 rookies on your team and that all played at some point during the season and got you to a Super Bowl, those guys weren't rookies about week 8. Most of the guys that played that were starters, especially in the secondary, and George Karlaftis, they weren't rookies after week 8. So I don't know, man. That's why I'm so, I guess, excited about the rookie class that we have this year. Because if you really look at what we did last year with the coaching staff that we have now, not what we had 2 years ago, but what we have right now with Joe Cohen, our secondary coach, Matt Nagy. I feel like these rookies are going to excel quicker or just as quick as the rookies did last year. I just feel that way. We have a great fucking coaching staff, dude. You couldn't ask for a better D-line coach. Could not ask for a better
we
one.
saw the difference.
Oh, God, it was huge. I mean, when we signed him, I wanted to run down the strip naked. I was like, oh, hell yeah. I mean, he's the fucking Brady killer. You know, I mean, him and Spags have beaten Brady more than anybody.
No.
So I'm just saying we're in a good spot, dude. I mean, I think we're in a good spot with who we have. That's why I'm not so concerned with Dehop signing with the Chiefs. Don't really care whether he does or doesn't. If he does, bonus. If he doesn't, and it could not be a bonus to a degree. But I think it's just going to take away from some of the other guys that really have the opportunity to excel this year as year one starters.
Yeah.
But with that being said, this is a good show. Caleb had some stuff going on tonight. Sorry he couldn't make the show, but he'll be back on next week. Or we actually probably be back on tomorrow night. You're going on vacation next week, correct?
I am going. Yes, sir. I will be in enemy territory.
Yep, he will be. Make sure you wear all your Chiefs gear.
Oh, I am. Oh, yeah.
And I do believe Colorado's a constitutional state, so you can carry a weapon if you got all your Chiefs stuff on. Allegedly. So, given the fact that you're going to be gone, we'll have a couple of guests on. We're going to have one guest on for sure. I like this guy. I'm not gonna say who he is. I think he's a pretty cool guy. I don't want to give away who he is right now. Extremely intelligent for someone of his age bracket. I'll put it that way. And we will see you tomorrow night. And then after that, enjoy your friggin' vacation, dude. I mean,
I plan on it.
Enjoy it. Hey, man. I mean, you got to enjoy. You can't beat the Rocky Mountains, dude. It's just a beautiful place. No matter how you look at it, yeah, they got a jack-off football team. But, man, they got a beautiful freaking state. They really do. So, enjoy your time there. And we will talk to everybody again tomorrow night. Make sure you tune in, Chiefs Focus Live. This show will actually be posted on Friday, just so everybody knows. Peace out, everybody.